listening to Bring Me the Axe. I'm Brian White. I'm one half of this morbid equation, and I'm joined by my co-host and brother Dave White. Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Thank you for asking me that question. I'm all right. Last night I traveled far to the western part of the state to attend a murder mystery dinner.
Oh yeah, were you the murderer?
No, we several of us specifically asked not to be involved in this production.
So you went to a murder mystery dinner and did not.
It was
partake.
more. Did you ever see that Bob's Burgers episode where all Linda wants to do is have murder mystery dinner theater?
I've not seen this. No.
My only experience with murder mystery dinners is the episode of The Golden Girls where they have one and Dorothy really gets to shine. And it was nothing like that. Nothing at all like that. It was like it's kind of like an immersive high school production theater. But
yeah, I would imagine that it's sort of like that. You know, you get what you get out of it what you put into it.
That's true, and I assure you, I put very little into it. Now, in my defense, I am quite famously curmudgeonly. I also am a very awkward person who detests small talk and engaging with others. So, I would say, like, look, you knew what you were getting when you invited me to this thing.
You know, next time they do something like that, just be like, "I will go in your stead because I'm a gigantic ham." That is my natural habitat. Is a place where I can just act like a weirdo for a couple hours, just really let it all hang out.
Yeah, well, hey, but you know what? The whole thing was in honor of Elena's new book, and she had a great time, and I think that's really what matters. So,
that's
huzzah!
Good. That's good. Who was the killer?
Who was the killer?
You didn't even pay that much attention to it?
No, I can't remember now.
Yeah. In a similar vein, I went up to Ye Old Haunted Overload, which if you follow us on Instagram, I've been putting stories out about my experience up there. We had our orientation tonight. The season kind of officially kicks off on the 11th. I've set aside some tickets for speaking of Ash and Elena for them to come and be my guest. But yeah, we had our orientation tonight, and this was the real sort of like nitty gritty. Like this is like what's going to happen to you when you're out there like booga booga at people. And one of the things that I learned, and I should have expected this, was most people at this event are going to be very, very drunk.
Hey,
and
this is New Hampshire. What the fuck did you expect? Even if it's not Halloween, most people are going to be really drunk.
But that's the thing is, I know that everybody's going to pregame. They're going to come to the thing, but I stand a good chance of being punched in the face.
Okay, yeah.
So,
fair.
That's fun. I kind of expected that, but let's see. There's another girl who on the way out of our little tour around the place said that. She went through 3 corsets last year because people kept grabbing them and tearing them. So, hey, you know what? Cool it.
Wait, listen, everybody. I'm just going to say blanket statement right here. Let's all just keep our hands off each other. Let's not try and take off each other's clothes, especially if they're strangers. Let's not punch each other in the face unless they really have it coming. And let's be honest, some people do.
You know what? I get it. It's exciting, and everything's all lit up, and there's the sound effects, and there's much pageantry. Just let everybody enjoy things.
Look, here's what I would do. This is if I was going to be part of your esteemed acting troupe. My character would be very simple. It would be very professionally dressed, tie, nice button down. And just at the very end, as people are coming out, I would do the last big scare, and I would just say, "Excuse me. You have not met your deductible for the year. Now, we've also reduced the maximum amount of coverage. Now, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to contact your doctor. You have to work out a payment plan. No, I don't know your doctor's phone number. I can't help you."
See,
the aristocrats.
You really should come up and do this because there is a one big last scare on this thing. You'd be perfect. I'm going to put your name in for it next year. They'll be giving you a call. That was awesome. Nope. I am the Butcher Fiend. That's my character.
Okay. Did you name yourself that?
I did. I created a whole character. I've got a costume that I put together. I've got props that I've built.
Do you have a motivation?
Yes, it is scare people and threaten to eat their flesh.
Okay, well. Classics. The classics never go out of style.
Nope. You got to keep it simple because you've only got a few seconds.
That's right. Always be closing.
Hey, so we practically grew up in neighborhood video stores, and the steady diet of utter garbage that those shops provided us with continues unabated to this day. There's no one else I enjoy chopping it up with more about trashy movies than Dave. Just before we get into it, this is a little housekeeping for your ass. If you want to keep up with us between episodes, you can also find us on Instagram at Bring Me the Axe Pod. Dave's over there at That Queer Wolf. Do follow us. You should.
Yeah.
You know, you just keep up with stuff. We have fun.
Yeah, Halloween is coming up October.
Yep, we've got a whole list of movies for you to watch, and you'll be seeing pictures of my Butcher Fiend costume. So, I'm also on TikTok if you do that sort of thing, doing the dancing, doing the Dougie.
Yeah, the hustle.
Doing the Bernie.
The electric slides. Did I already use the electric slide? I feel like I've got a handful of dances.
Maybe you got like 3 doing that double hand job dance that Donald Trump does.
Please don't, because that shit is so upsetting to watch. It is like watching a man who has never even heard of dancing before.
Which is funny because his favorite band is like the Village People.
Which is also quite strange.
You know what? He's just America's most manly man. Just
really
loves
really
Andrew Lloyd Webber and the Village People.
Not at all a deranged, old, doddering, strange creature.
Just the manliest, most masculine man that
doesn't like to get his hands dirty. He's afraid of stairs.
Just the peak masculinity. Yep. That's what it looks like. A guy who just loves the Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah. So, look us up
nobody loves the Phantom of the Opera.
Donald Trump does. And if you don't know, we have another show called 99 Cent Reynolds. Where we cover all manner of video store madness on the weeks that bring me the axis off. Our latest episode covering Nobuhiko Obayashi's candy-covered freak-out house is out now, and we'll be kicking off our Bring Me the Axe Spooky Season Spectacular, where in all of October will be nothing but Bring Me the Axe episodes. And we're kicking it off with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
So I think it's a 50th anniversary of that film this year.
Do believe you're right. Yeah. You can also contact us directly at bringmetheaxepod@gmail.com with any questions, comments, or suggestions. Do let us know. If there's a movie that you love and would like to hear us, give it the old business. And lastly, if you like what you hear, you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube now. Search us by name and subscribe if you prefer to consume your podcasts that way. And you'd be doing us a favor by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So I don't know what you're waiting for.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate it when people do that. I like that.
I do. You know what? I check it every now and then. I see the number go up.
That's nice.
Especially if you leave like a written one, like a little typewritten message, in a review. Ooh, that warms me in the center of my being.
Yeah, you'd be like, oh, Brian's narrations are really good. And that other one is occasionally funny, but he seems mostly weird and mean.
Oh, yeah. So what was it? I'm not going to say it. Forget it. And if you listen on YouTube, do us a favor. Give the episode a like and leave a comment. We love hearing from
contrarians.
you guys.
We were contrarians.
Oh, that's what it is. We're contrarians. Just wanted to get all that out of the way right at the top of the show because I'm going to give you a taste of what we're talking about tonight. It is steamy and sexy.
And Italian.
And very Italian.
In the tradition of Sam Raimi's Evil Dead and Stuart Gordon's Reanimator, October Films presents Cemetery Man, a film by Michele Soavi.
Death, death, death comes sweeping down. Filthy death, the leering clown. Death on wings, death by surprise, veiling evil from worldly eyes. Death that's born as life succumbs, while death and love, two kindred drums, beat the time to judgment day. An actor in a passion play, without beginning, without end, evermore. Amen.
You claim they come to life within 7 days of burial.
Nagi! They came back sooner than we thought!
He's only eating me.
Move aside.
Mind your business! this!
This is my business. They pay me for it.
You've come 3 times already.
Twice. Third one was faked. Get down or I'll shoot.
You can't. I'm the mayor.
X.
Cemetery Man, a film about life's grave issues.
Ooh, Cemetery Man.
Now, I'll tell you what, if I saw that movie trailer, I would say, holy shit, I need to see that movie. I'm going to, unfortunately, have to say the trailer is a little bit better than the actual movie might be.
I don't know.
It is a very exciting trailer.
It definitely is. It's a very 90s trailer, and it reminds me of like a very particular time when I was renting a lot of videos, and all them trailers looked like that.
Yeah.
When
did you see this movie?
This apparently was released on video in the United States. I don't remember seeing it anywhere on any shelves. This one came to me through a video trade. Probably 96 or 95 or 96.
Because it came out, it didn't come out until 96.
The movie itself was released in 94.
I don't think it was. I think it was shot in 94.
Okay. All right. Yeah. But yeah, it was around then because the version that I had was Dellamorte Dellamore, which it's just a title difference. There's no difference between the versions as far as I know.
It's a better title.
It's a better title.
Cemetery Man's kind of a dumb title.
Yeah, it kind of, I don't know.
It undersells it.
For American audiences, it really kind of gets it across.
I think I watched it with my friend Andrea in probably, I must say like 2003, maybe 2004.
Yeah. I mean, before we get too far into this, like we say up top in the little preamble there, this is a listener request. This comes from Where Eagles Dare on Instagram. She asked for this so long ago, and we are finally getting to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Hey, dreams do come true.
Well, but I'm glad because we both love an Italian picture.
I'm surprised that we've done some Italian stuff in the past, but we have not done that many. And this is odd because I would say that the two of us have a particular appreciation for Italian horror, Italian science fiction, Italian food.
Yeah. All out, put them all together.
Yeah. This is, but yeah, good God. I'm glad we're doing it because this is a movie that I'm conflicted on it because I don't not like it, but I'm also like,
it is so of its time.
Yeah, but like there were several times, again, like usual, I watch it twice, and both times there were points where I was like, is this over yet?
Mm-hmm. It does drag quite a bit. But I think part of the problem is that it changes tone so many times, and it is so jarring when it happens that you're like, is this the same fucking movie? Like the last half of this movie feels like the last half of a completely different movie.
For sure. And I don't know. Well, we'll talk about it when we kind of get into the notes about this. But I think the thing that I find most confusing about it is it this, like I've never read the novel. I don't believe there's an English version of it, so it'd be very hard for me to read anyways. Even though I do speak a little bit of Italian, but
buongiorno.
About that, yeah. I can ask where the bathroom is as well.
Buonasera.
But it's also based on a very, very popular comic book in Europe that I have read, and I own a big huge tome that Dark Horse put out, and so
that also has a movie, and it is not good.
Oh, I'm gonna mention it because I've seen it. I reviewed it for Cinema Suicide like a million years ago. I remember nothing about it except that Brandon Routh is in it.
Yep.
But yeah, it's weird because this movie falls in a very, very, very dark period for Italian horror in particular. Because essentially the gas is out of the tank.
Oh, yeah.
They've been running on fumes for so long.
This is when we're getting like Zombie 5 and shit like that.
Yeah, I believe one of Soavi's movies, one of the movies that he made is actually sold as like either Zombie 5 or maybe it's
No,
like
Alfesta is Zombie 5.
Oh God, yeah, but like that, but that's emblematic of this period.
I think it's maybe Zombie 3 might be his.
Might be, yeah, but like even at this period, like Bruno Mattei is even out of the game at this point.
Yeah.
And so it's people who used to do music for Bruno Mattei movies are now directing the movies for Fabrizio De Angelis, and it's really, really, really bleak.
Well, it's also the same thing that happened in the U.S. Is like you have a new audience all of a sudden, like a new generation of film watchers and the like, and they're not so much interested in the shit the previous generation of film goers was interested in. Like, but you've got the same, so you end up with like in the 80s, you've got all the fucking Italian classics.
But in the early 80s, because that's really where the kind of golden age of Italian horror kind of ends, is 81, 82 maybe.
Yeah, but you still get some good ones. You got some good ones in the like late 80s. You still got Dario Argento still's got a couple.
Lamberto Bava's got a couple of decent,
like Blade in the Dark
movies.
Comes out, I think, in like 87 or 88. Like there's still some good stuff, but Michele Soavi he's like the AD on a lot of those things. So it's like now it's his time to shine, and it's like wah, too late.
And that's too bad, because his movies, I would say, are for the most part nonsense, but they look really,
yeah.
really
He's a very
good.
talented, and I think that is my takeaway from this entire film. He's a very talented filmmaker, or he has a very clear aesthetic.
He understands what he's doing when he composes a shot, which I think is why, like, this movie, The Church, The Sect, they've all, like, the movies are mostly just like stream of consciousness. They're very, very Italian in that way, but they look so much cooler than any of the stuff that his contemporaries were making at the same time.
But he also, I think, because he's got three movies really before this.
He's got Stage Fright, he's got The
Church,
and
and
he has The Church.
And those are all pretty good. But those movies get sold as a Dario Argento production, or like something, a Joe D'Amato production.
Because he worked with Joe D'Amato, but he moved on to sort of class up his career by moving in and sort of working for Argento. But yeah, like Argento would get like an EP credit on these movies, and then they would just plaster his name all over the posters and video boxes.
This movie really feels like this is his chance to kind of establish himself and his brand. And it is a big swing. Like, this is an ambitious movie. I don't think he pulls it off. I think there's a lot of cool stuff.
I think he does for the most part. It's not a terribly coherent story, which is really kind of the albatross for the movie. Is if it told a story that I was following from beginning to end, instead of feeling like this movie was a series of scenes that are all kind of vaguely related to one another, it would probably have made a much bigger impression than it did. But
it feels to me, and I'm going to make a weird comparison here. If you ever watch like the episodic Peanuts cartoons, what a lot of them essentially are like they take strips, like the daily strips, and they kind of like flesh them out a little bit into vignettes, and they then piece the vignettes together to make a kind of vaguely connected plot that runs from beginning to end. But they're really just separate storylines. They're like a little bit like kind of like Run Lola Run or something like that. Like they give you little pieces of a world, and it's presented to you as though it is a coherent story. That's kind of how this feels every now and then, where I feel like I'm getting pieces of a comic that are just sort of like placed back to back, but they don't necessarily flow narratively from one to the other. And it feels very much like a strip, like just a series of short things put together with like an overarching plot that doesn't make a lot of sense and has a shitload of holes in it.
Yeah. Stylish as hell, though.
Yeah, my biggest problem, though, and the thing that I realized, because I watched it once, and I was like, I don't think I like this movie very much. But then I was like, I'm going to watch it again, because I did like it the first time I saw it. And that was a long time ago, but I figured I'd give it another go. And so I watched it again this afternoon, and I liked it a little bit more. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this feels like a movie made by and for teenage boys. Like it has such an unsophisticated humor to it, and it is a profoundly horny in a way that is very juvenile, which I don't think these are necessarily bad things, especially when it comes to horror. But when you have a director whose vision, or at least his aesthetic vision, is, I think it's fair to say it is kind of sophisticated. The humor and all this other weird stuff that's running through it just kind of undermines the whole product in the end, where you're like, why did it have to be like fart jokes on top of like references to like Victorian era paintings?
I know there's like a direct visual reference to René Magritte in this, but I don't remember any fart jokes though.
But there's like vomiting and like disgusting. There's a lot of disgusting stuff. There's a lot of sex that feels very juvenile to me.
It's it's all cribbed from the comic book, which we'll talk about, which is lost on us because Dylan Dog has never hit here. Right. Which is kind of why like nobody's ever heard of that Brandon Routh movie. It is a phenomenon in Europe that has stayed in Europe and has never been able to really kind of get its hooks in the United States comic book market, mostly because American expectations of comic books are way different than what people expect in Europe.
Poor Brandon Routh. We'll talk about it. Poor Brandon Routh, Hollywood's forgotten gay. Yeah, let's
run the facts, shall we?
We must.
Yep. So the year was 1994, year of our Lord. So here are some other movies that were released in the year 1994. Dark Waters came out that year.
Ooh, yikes.
Yeah.
That's a bad
I recently revisited that one because I remembered it being very, very confusing and very dreamy in stream of consciousness, but also like essentially it's like an H.P. Lovecraft adaptation, and I could not finish it.
Nope, it is absolute nonsense.
Yep. Creatures from the Abyss came out in 1994, and I absolutely refuse to believe that movie was made anywhere even remotely close to the 90s.
I was just going to say, I thought that movie was from the 80s.
It looks like something straight out of 1986. Which it might be. It might be the case is where it was a movie that was made in the 80s and just sat on a shelf until some distributor bought it for like $5. In the Mouth of Madness came out in 1994.
Probably his last good movie.
I was going to say ostensibly John Carpenter's last good movie. Interview with the Vampire was released in 94.
Sexy.
So sexy. And rounding out 1994, Wes Craven knocking it out of the park with New Nightmare.
That's a pretty good one.
It's a good movie, man.
Looks 90s as hell, though.
I watched it for the first time in a while last year, and I was like, yeah, this is like, it is like an anchor set directly in 1994.
Yeah, like everybody is just fucking straight out of a JCPenney catalog.
I was gonna say Heather Langenkamp's costumes are like straight from like a Sears catalog. They're great. So our cast and crew, we've been mentioning his name a whole bunch. Michele Soavi. You know him as the guy with the metal face in Demons, or the guy in the car where Daniela Doria vomits up her guts in City of the Living Dead.
That's right.
Yep, he was an actor before he really properly got in.
But as I was everything.
As I'm kind of finding, like, I kind of texted you, and I was like, George Eastman had a writing credit on such and such. Production on horror movies in Italy was a very small pool of talent that just everybody was doing everything.
And it seems very much like it was kind of like an apprenticeship model almost. Like people just kind of like, even from all sides, like if you were a composer, you would have like, you know, your Piero Umiliani or whatever, and then you've got like some young upstart in your orchestra or who's like studying underneath you, and then he's the next, you know, he's Fabio Frizzi or whatever, something like that. Like it always seemed like that's kind of how it worked. Like, you know, Dardano Sacchetti has other people sort of writing with him, and then they become not Dardano Sacchetti because there is no other. But
that is a singular talent.
That is a machine, is what that is. But you know what I mean? Like it just seems like there's always this kind of like one core group producing the next group, and it's always just this small group of people that all show up in the same fucking. Like you could tell me the same 40 people made every movie in Italy between 1968 and 1982, and I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Perfectly reasonable expectation for sure,
and maybe even less than 40.
I know. Soavi hovered around the edges of the Italian film scene beginning in the 70s, working as a first or second AD for Joe D'Amato. And then for Dario Argento, who sent him on his way in the mid-'80s, beginning with the utterly bonkers Stage Fright.
Oh, that's what he did. 2020 Texas Gladiators.
Oh, yes.
With Joe D'Amato. Great movie.
Yep. Moving on to The Church, the sect, and coming into a brief hiatus after this one in order to take care of his sick son. Couldn't find an answer to how that story ends. I hope it ended well. Nowadays, he works primarily in Italian television.
He was also the AD on Baron Munchausen.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, he did get his hands on some international stuff. So yeah,
and I think you could see the influence of Argento and Terry Gilliam on this one.
Oh, yes.
On all of them, obviously, but like particularly this one.
Yep. Our cast is headed up by Rupert Everett, a professional, handsome man.
That's right.
Yep. Descendant of royalty, author, actor of some acclaim.
Yes, our celebrated Hollywood gay.
Yep. He is the visual reference for the very character that he's playing in this movie. Tiziano Sclavi, the author of the novel the movie is based on and the creator of Dylan Dog, specifically cites Everett's appearance in Another Country as the sort of prototype for that character, Dylan Dog. He's also the prototype of the gay best friend from the 90s rom-com phenomenons.
Yep. Another Country, huh?
Yeah. I don't think I've seen it.
It's not very good.
I looked up his like sort of filmography, and I'm like, I don't think I've heard this guy, his name mentioned in anything. And then I looked and I was like, Jesus Christ, he has been like consistently fucking busy since the 1980s. Yeah. Apparently there was a television production of In the Name of the Rose that he's in.
Really?
I'd be interested in seeing it. But like, I looked that one up. The cast is nuts. So like, John Turturro, Michael Emerson, like, there's a lot of people in that thing. And I'm like, I've not once heard about this thing.
Okay, well, you know how I feel about that book, so I would. I would care to see the film.
Yeah. We've also got Anna Falchi, an Italian model since her teenage years. She ends up appearing in a commercial directed by Federico Fellini, which opens up some doors that lead to the movies. She's not terribly well known outside of Italy, and despite acting in a couple dozen films, mostly comedies, this is the only one she's likely known for in the United States. Yeah. And we're going to round it out with Francois Haji Lazaro, who was primarily known in his native France as a musician in numerous folk punk bands. As a matter of fact, his French Wikipedia page is almost entirely dedicated to his work in bands like Pigalle and the Butcher Boys. Hardly makes any mention of his movie work, which is where American audiences are likely to recognize him. Apart from this, he also has small roles in French movies like Jean-Pierre Jeunet's City of Lost Children and Christophe Gans's Brotherhood of the Wolf.
Which is a movie that I remember being much better than it really is.
I haven't seen it since it came out, and I would like to leave it like... I want to leave it like that in my memory.
Please do. Also, based on a true story.
What?
Yeah.
God damn.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, I remember I went to that because I was like, all right, I'll go see a French werewolf movie, and then imagine my surprise when it's French, but there's no werewolves in it.
Nope. But there is the guy from Iron Chef,
Mark Dacascos. Yeah. So we've got a tagline. There's just one. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's okay.
Zombies, guns, and sex. Oh my.
Yeah. I'll take it. It tells you what it is. Tells you exactly what you're getting.
It's exactly what you're getting. It's a sexy zombie movie with a lot of gunplay. Mm-hmm. Yep. This movie is known in Spain as Mi novia es un zombie. My girlfriend is a zombie. And it is adapted from a 1991 novel called Dellamorte Dellamore, which means of love and of death, by the author Tiziano Sclavi, which is kind of sort of adapted from Sclavi's extremely popular comic book series, Dylan Dog.
So this actually has a weird kind of the way it comes into being is kind of interesting. So Soavi picked up the comic book like at a newsstand, just kind of on a whim. He liked the art and was like, "Oh, I'll give this a look." And like he got really into it and really loved it. And so he calls up Sclavi and says, I came across your comic book. I would really love to turn this thing into a movie." And he says, whoa, Padre, listen. He's like, "Well, thank you very much. However, I have already promised the film rights to my friend, and so I can't give you that." He was like, "But if ever you're in, I don't know where the fuck he's from, wherever that is, look me up. We'll get together because I also happen to like your movies quite a bit." So they do. And he says, "Well, I can't give you that because obviously it's already taken, but I'll give you these two things." And he gives him, one of them's a book he had just published. I can't remember what it's called. And the other one is this book. And it has like his story of how the book ends up getting published because it was unpublished at the time. He was like,
right.
It's like
he wrote it in the early '80s, and it just sort of sat unpublished for like a decade.
And it was also very similar to Dylan Dog, which is probably why it was like none of the publishers kind of wanted it.
The thing is the adaptation of this movie, or rather, the adaptation of the book is really kind of a backdoor adaptation of Dylan Dog.
Which
the
I got to
characters
appreciate
are
that.
very similar, and they both have these kind of comic relief sidekick characters. They're both very melancholy. Even though this character is a creation in the novel, it eventually sort of spirals backwards and ends up in the comic books anyways.
Yeah. So he has the one book that has been published, and he's like, "All right, well, I like this book. Let's get the rights to this." And he was like, "Oh man, you should have called me 5 minutes ago," because he'd just given the rights to someone else for that. He's like, "But hey, that other one, right?" And he was like, "I guess so." But how he describes Sclavi is very interesting. He describes him as an old child who lives with two cats. And he says the pads of his cat's feet were so soft because they never walked on anything but carpet. And I was like, what kind of deranged person is this? I get the feeling that Sclavi might be a bit of a princess.
Yeah,
a principessa, if you will. He sounds like he's just a very, very strange man.
I'll tell you, the comic book is definitely really, really fucking weird.
Because it's like, if you're watching Another Country and you're like, "Oh, this handsome fellow here. Oh, now he's nude. I think I'm going to make him my main character. Cats, get back on the carpet." So eventually, like, one thing leads to another, but it also involves some story where, like, his kid took the book to school and, like, was passing it around for all the other kids to read, and like the teacher got a hold of it and was like, "Oh my God, what the fuck is this?" And like they called him up and like all this stuff, and he's like, "Well, if this is causing such a stir among children and adults in this one school, I bet it would make a pretty good movie." And so he, gets a screenwriter and they adapt it and turn it into a thing.
That's pretty great.
It's a pretty funny story. And to watch him tell it is funny too, because he's very animated.
So yeah, created in 1986, Dylan Dog is an occult detective who takes on cases that feature monsters, ghosts, serial killers, and all that. And like the Mickey Spillane stories that inspired the character, they always involve a woman that Dylan invariably falls in love with and then loses, usually to death. They are seriously great comics that are particularly European and always involve some sort of like left-wing or sort of anti-bourgeois sentiment. You can get a collection of those comics from Dark Horse. It's like a big, like huge New York phone book size edition. I recommend it. It really is all that.
It reminds me of like the other kind of 90s indie stuff, like kind of fringier stuff like Tank Girl, Preacher, which is not the 90s, but still has that kind of vibe to it.
Yeah. No,
like
if it were released here, it definitely would have been released in that kind of scene, like that sort of top shelf, the high shelves at the comic store, independent stuff.
Like it has a youthful kind of irreverence to it and a little bit of nihilistic. It's the kind of thing that you can only write when you're young, because there's a sort of naivete to its sensibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, it really is. It's like there's an absurdity about it. It's really, really hard to kind of explain. European comics, particularly Italian and French comic books, have a sort of character to them that I I'm obsessed with, and I wish that I spoke those languages better so that I could read them, because like they are not like American comics. Like you can get a little window into that world through like digests like Heavy Metal, or like you can get like collections of Jean Giraud's stuff, Moebius.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't really know how to describe it. If you read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's really, really bizarre. It's almost like there's this kind of like shadow side of sort of Europe's kind of cultural consciousness is sort of expressed through these comics, because like they're superhero books, but those books are like way outsold by these ones that have really strange anti-heroes. Criminals are usually like main characters.
Well, yeah, I mean, remember the cultures that they're coming from. I mean, especially Italy, which had a really repressive government for a very long time. I mean, they didn't have horror movies in Italy until the late 50s.
Yeah.
So I think, but you get a lot of the humor too that comes out in this, and I think that's where I get tripped up, because it's a very, I don't want to say it's not, the whole thing gets lost in translation, but it's not something we're that accustomed to here. It's a very sex-forward humor, which is not something in the U.S. that we don't really have that for. Maybe a little bit in the early 2000s, but for the most part,
we got that puritanic shit going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a blending of genres that is very off-putting. Like, this is the same culture that gave us like a horror, like actual horror pornography that is a very off-putting, unnerving thing to see. So it's blending all these things that just for the American mind maybe don't traditionally go together in this way. And so maybe that's why I get thrown off. But at the same time, it does feel like it's drawing, at least the movie, is drawing heavily on things like Dead Alive or Evil Dead, like gory, splattery things where that is part of the humor.
Yeah.
And that's a new thing in the 90s. Well, not Evil Dead, obviously, but that idea, like horror and comedy together, is something that wasn't really popular yet. And so it's kind of interesting that it's coming out in that way as well.
Yeah. Its popularity cannot be overstated. It is the second most best-selling comic in Italy. Sales of 120,000 copies a month, which is significant. The comics are steeped in the same
does anything do that now?
No. I remember a long time ago, a friend of mine actually worked sort of on the margins for Marvel and DC. And he was like at the height of comic book sales, like in the 90s, when it was kind of like a speculative commodity. A top selling comic book would sell about 60,000.
Yeah, like I think at its peak, like Something is Killing the Children was doing like 80,000.
Yeah,
which is a great comic book.
Comics are steeped in the same sort of sexy, absurd grotesquery that we explored in our recent episode about House. Go back and listen to that one. It's a good episode.
What? You thought that movie was weird?
Yep. Umberto Eco is quoted saying, "I can read the Bible, Homer, and Dylan Dog for days on end without getting bored."
That's my man.
Your man. Yep. And also, Dylan Dog's office in the comic books is located at a very real location in London, where a real Dylan Dog-themed cafe opened out here in the real world. Yep, so you can go there.
Is it still there?
Yep, I looked it up. Yeah. So, though Francesco Dellamorte is a narratively distinct character from Dylan Dog, featured in his own novel, Sclavi is on record saying that he's also a pastiche of his other character. However, like we mentioned, Dellamorte and Nagi end up appearing in Dylan Dog comics from time to time, beginning with his creation in the 90s.
Yeah,
Nagi
this all feels like a way
different.
to avoid getting sued.
Yeah, it's really weird. I'm sure that people in Italy like recognized it because it was like, a very front and center kind of cultural commodity. But yeah. Cemetery Man, though a very loose adaptation, is the first of two Dylan Dog movies. The other is a direct adaptation from 2010 starring Brandon Routh, which I've seen, but remember absolutely nothing about.
No bueno.
I suppose that if I enjoyed the movie, I probably would remember at least something about it. Also, there is supposedly a TV series in development by who else but fucking James Wan.
Ugh.
I know, dude is just everywhere.
Let's make it as Christian as possible.
I know. Martin Scorsese called this movie one of the best Italian movies of the 90s.
I mean, look, the competition was not exactly stiff.
I know.
Zombie 5, everybody.
Troll 6. Mm-hmm. Special effects are by Sergio Stivoletti.
And they're great.
They're really great. He's the Italian Rick Baker. He is really fucking good. This is
all practical effects except for, I think, the last scene.
With the
snow.
Okay, yeah. Oh, right, yeah. And the score was originally supposed to be composed by Tangerine Dream.
Oh, thank God it's not. I'm a little Tangerine Dreamed out right now.
I fucking love Tangerine Dream. Yeah. Ultimately, they went with a musician named Riccardo Biseo, who is very obviously doing his best Tangerine Dream cover with
So
this,
there's two people who actually do this. Manuel De Sica does the score for it.
Oh, okay.
I think more rockish parts are the other guy.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Oh, speaking of rockish parts, whenever the motorcycle guys are on that music that you hear,
yeah,
fucking Ozzy.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, it's there are parts of this where I was like, this movie feels like a German music video.
Yeah.
This is like an Alphaville video.
You got any reviews? I hear reviewers were unkind to it.
They did not take very much to this. So these are all American reviewers. So New York Times. Obviously, Cemetery Man is not a conventional horror movie, but what is it? For all the repulsive goings-on, the movie is oddly unscary, and after a certain number of zombies have rattled around the old graveyard, it all begins to seem terribly repetitive. Not gonna lie, I kind of agree.
Yeah, they're not wrong.
Yep. Boston Globe. Eventually, Cemetery Man runs out of ideas, and it tries for a Twilight Zone ending it can't bring off. But Cemetery Man is several cuts above most attempts at supernatural splatter films.
Okay. I'm still with you.
Bit of a theme emerging here. Cemetery Man might appeal to those with a working knowledge of the horror genre, but except for its gore value and a couple of interesting scenes, there's not much to keep Cemetery Man from being buried on the video shelves before too long. Chicago Tribune.
All right, that's a little brutal.
Well, Chicago Tribune, so, you know.
Yeah.
LA Times. It begins as a droll grand guignol comedy, but Soavi catches us by surprise by how serious his picture becomes. Cemetery Man becomes a tantalizing philosophical riddle, and Soavi was wise to cast Everett, who can be as passionate intellectually as he is emotionally. As Kevin Thomas, LA Times, he actually liked it quite a bit. And I think why I pulled those four is I think they reflect kind of how I felt about it, but they're also, that's kind of the consensus is like, if people liked it, they liked it a lot because it has some great moments and because Rupert Everett is, he's pretty charming throughout. He does a pretty good job. He kind of carries the movie. But for the most part, a lot of people are like, it has its moments, but it's slow and a little boring and it gets really repetitive towards the end. And I do think there's something in there about this idea that he does try to pull out some metaphor at the end, and it's like, whoa, man, we are way beyond that. It is well past where you could have gotten that.
That's the thing is when it ends, I'm like, what? They're trying to say something here.
Yeah.
They're trying to do something, but they don't set it up well. And
well,
so when the movie ends, I'm like, what?
It's like waxing philosophical from beginning to end without ever really saying anything. Like you think you're being profound, but you're not really adding anything to any conversation here.
Yeah.
And I think that's just because this is a very muddled movie.
Yeah.
Like there's just so much going on, and it is taking, left and right turns nonstop. It's gross, it's funny, it's sexy, and then you're like, wait, what the fuck is happening now?
Yeah, right.
There's like a woman who plays 4 different characters, but you're never really sure why.
I know. I gotta admit, like I'm not against those reviews at all. I feel like my own thoughts of this, and because I struggled kind of writing the sort of breakdown of it, because after a while I'm like, I feel like I have written the same paragraph over and over and over here. So
Yeah, and then you're like, well, now I feel like I'm talking about a totally different movie.
yeah, it definitely ends that way. Like it feels like it is the ending of an entirely different movie.
Yeah. There's a great thing that I saw when, it was in the Soavi interview I was watching. He said that the process of making this sounds like it was really difficult, and it went over long, it went over budget, it went over everything. And they were constantly fighting with each other, especially him and Rupert Everett. And I guess in a interview right after, like a press thing, right after the movie came out, Rupert Everett said he was the worst director he'd ever worked with.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and at first he was like, it kind of hurt my feelings at first. He was like, because I liked him, and this is just sort of how Italians work, is we yell at each other and it's very intense. But like, they were constantly in this cycle of like, we would start off as friends in the morning and we would be screaming at each other by the end of the day, and then we'd make up and start over again. And he was like, I understood after a while that that's what he meant. Like, he didn't really think he was the worst director. He was like, this was a frustrating experience. Like, that's what he was getting at. And he was like, so I kind of understand if you're not an Italian who's like familiar with the industry, that's probably a little bit obnoxious. And he was very good natured, but he seems like a really good guy.
Huh.
But I just thought it was kind of funny that he was like really shit talked him, because much later he was like, oh no, I really like him. I think his movies are great. And I think this movie was great. And so,
well, a good
it
time
all
was
worked
had
out.
by all.
Yeah. Good sexy time was had by all.
Yep. Shall we?
Why not?
All right. So we open on the shabby accommodations of Francesco Dellamorte, who lives in a shack in the middle of the Buffalore Cemetery. Mm-hmm. He answers the phone fresh out of the shower, practically chiseled from stone.
Yep, you like to see it.
Yep. It's his friend Franco, from the city office, not Marco. There's also a knock on the door, which he answers. A dead man stands on his doorstep. So Francesco shoots him straight in the head and then resumes his phone call.
It's a great opening.
It is a pretty great opening. It's a good way to really catch people off guard. Then he goes downstairs, gets his friend Nagi, and they take him back out to his grave and bury him again. And
I believe this is where we get a lot of like weird kind of exposition narration.
Yeah. So
narration is always such a weird choice for movies. Because it's not a good choice. It's almost never a good choice.
No. It's just, it comes.
It's when you have interiority and you can't do it in the movie.
It's that, or like your character is being adapted from like a book or a comic book, and they have this sort of like rich internal landscape, and there's a lot of like internal monologues going on. Like, you can do that in a book. That is what is what's expected. But I don't know. I don't like it when it happens in movies.
It's lazy and uncreative.
It's like you can't seem to find a better, more visual way to kind of express what's happening on the inside for these characters.
And he does it a bunch of times in this, and it's like, come on, man.
I know. Noises in the cemetery distract Francesco, but he lets it go. And then moments later, another zombie suddenly erupts from the ground. Without his gun, Dellamorte takes the shovel from Nagi and hits the zombie over the head with it.
I like the zombies. They have like tree roots and shit.
Yeah. Like they're bodies that have been like.
Yeah, he said he wanted them to seem as though they were a part, like bodies are a part of nature, especially when they're put in the ground, they become a part of nature. And so he really wanted to find a way to express that. And it's a little weird because it's a very untraditional zombie, but I think it looks cool.
It's very, very cool, especially given that, Italian zombies have a look. Mm-hmm. And this is, for the first time in years, this is a brand new sort of presentation.
And that I think was his other reason. That was why he was like, because we have a tradition in this country of like the zombie movie and how they look and they're all mangled. Like it's kind of stereotypical at this point. They kind of rebranded the zombie. And he was like, I wanted to do something different and new, which I think goes back to my feeling that this is his attempt to sort of like carve out his own space in the genre.
Yeah. Because by this point, it has been a while since there's been a Dario Argento, since there's been a Lucio Fulci. So, yeah, I can see him kind of like swinging for the fences with this one. He wants to like really leave a mark. Back in his shack, Francesco introduces himself in voiceover. He is Saint Francis of Death. He calls the zombies returners, who, for unknown reasons, almost always return from the grave 7 days after burial.
Now, they never explain this, right?
They never do.
Okay, and I'm fine with that. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss it.
No. It's a detail of the movie that like I don't mind. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, there are certain movies where I will watch where I'll be like, why the fuck are zombies walking around?
Yeah,
but
it's not critical to the plot that you know why.
No. So in the morning, Francesco opens up the cemetery. Waiting for him, as usual, is Mrs. Kiramundo, who always calls him engineer for some reason.
So she's not the only one. Why do they keep calling him engineer?
It might be like an official title.
Okay. Because this, again, feels like a little bit of a plot hole. It feels like something that is important because the mayor calls him that too. And so does the new mayor later on. It's like they all keep calling him that, and it implies something. And I feel like the fact that you don't ever explain why feels like you've left out something important.
I know.
Because there is a vague sense that some people in the town know this is happening, but that's it. You never get more than that.
Yeah, it is a rumor.
Yeah.
So Nagi desperately attempts to rake up all the dead leaves as the wind blows them out of his wheelbarrow. I think he's my favorite character in the whole movie.
He is great, and he's the most nuanced. His performance is the most nuanced. Like, he does so much, because he doesn't speak, he does so much like physical stuff, and a little bit borders on like ableism, but you know, for the most part, it's really just kind of like pratfalls and sight gags, and it's like, it works. He does it very well.
Yeah. So as they prep a grave for a funeral, which comes through moments later, he spots a woman in a black veil among the procession and immediately falls in love with her.
It's basically the November Rain video.
Yeah, it is. Days later, she returns to visit the grave of her husband, the man they buried previously, and he goes to meet her, but kind of makes a mess of it, asking how long the man has been dead.
Just 2 weeks. 2 weeks, and he's already jocking her.
2 weeks.
Like, I see you jocking me.
Trying
to play like
guys. You know me. In the city, Francesco goes to the city office to get his pay, say hey to his friend, Franco, the only living person who calls him, he says.
Now, they're just friends, right?
Yeah, because the only other person that he really, apart from Nagi, that he ever really interacts with is this guy at the city office who just gives him his money.
Okay, that's what he's doing there.
Yeah.
Because like later on, they have like a very passionate phone call.
Yes, and then at the end, he's the guy who like claims who takes responsibility for these
steals his murders. Yeah.
Yep. So on the way out, he's harassed by some punks on motorcycles,
which is very bad-looking fellas,
right?
Denim jackets.
This is very, very Italian. That obsession with that particular sort of like dirt bike style.
Yeah, they're more motorbikes than motorcycles.
Yeah.
Like, you may as well put these fucking people in windbreakers because there's nothing threatening about any of them.
Not at all. No, I almost felt like I had to really sort of clarify that. When I say bikers, they're not bikers.
Yeah, they're like dirtbag teens on motorbikes.
Yeah, in a Polizio Tesco, they'd be the guys who like ride up suddenly and like yank some lady's purse and then then drive away quickly.
But with like a samurai sword. Just because.
Yep. Oh yeah, it's that bike from Demons.
Yep. But he does something interesting, and I noticed it when I watched it, but then Soavi clarifies it in the thing I was watching. He says that he wanted to shoot when he was everything in the cemetery, like because most of the movie takes place inside the cemetery. He was very deliberate about everything. Everything is very like structured and just sort of composed, but outside he wanted that world to feel very chaotic and shitty and sloppy. That's sort of like, that's where the real monsters are, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so he intentionally did this kind of sloppy camera work the whole time they're outside. Like they're on like a dolly for a lot of it, just sort of moving it around. So it's kind of bouncing and I was like, that's kind of it's an interesting juxtaposition. I don't know that it works that well. But I noticed it, so it does, I noticed it, but I didn't understand what he was doing.
Right.
So I don't get that vibe.
I mean, I suppose like having it explained, if you got to explain it, then,
Right.
it's not really
I guess
working.
that's why I think it's not that successful. But I do think it's an interesting approach to trying to convey like this is not his element. Like this is not Dellamorte's element. Like this
Right.
is the place he
'cause
doesn't belong.
Those cemetery sets are fucking amazing. They're
He said
really,
it was really
cool.
It was really, really hard to find that. He said because in Italy everything is so it's all marble. It's all like stark white marble in a lot of the cemeteries. And he was like, so everywhere we went, it was so sad. Like they were like these really like kind of hard stone places. He said, I wanted something that was alive, that had, big trees and plants and animals, like, because that's what he wanted to show, this kind of nature aspect of the cycle of life and whatever. And he was like, every cemetery we looked at was just this kind of hard stone place that was just really, really sad, and we could not make a comedy there. So they eventually found two. Most of them are shot in one place.
Gotcha. I think the nighttime shots of the cemetery are sets, though, right?
No.
Oh, shit, really?
Most of it's shot on site.
God damn, all right.
Yeah. There's a couple like close-up stuff that they do, like close-up around grave stuff. That, I think some of that stuff, I think the motorcycle part when it comes out of the grave, I think that's also a set. But I'll explain that when we get there because that part's actually really cool.
Yeah. Back at the cemetery, Francesco reads the newspaper at the bottom of a grave while Nagi digs it. When a flower drifts into the grave, like the flowers that the woman has been bringing to her husband's grave, and Francesco races out to see her again. He introduces himself properly this time. She ignores him for the most part till he announces that they have an ossuary.
Yeah. My note says, really? Ossuary is what wins her over.
she loves that ossuary.
She loves old things.
Yep. You're not wrong. So he takes her to it, which excites her. An underground crypt filled with water, bones, and dirt. He goes to kiss her, but she stops him and drapes a red veil over his face first.
It's
then they
the most Italian thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. That's a deliberate nod to The Lovers by Magritte.
Mm-hmm.
She suddenly stops and pulls away, horrified that she is cheating on her late husband, announcing that the allure of the ossuary drove her to do it.
Yeah, my other note says, oh, she's unstable.
As she runs away, skeletal hands catch on her dress, tearing parts of it off as she runs away.
Now, see, this is the shit that I'm like, okay, do we need to do this? Like, that feels a little juvenile as well.
It's that sexy stuff.
And like, what if like her shirt gets caught on a skeleton and then her boobs pop out? Like, yep, that could happen, I guess.
No, you got to say it in an Italian accent, and then it's a little bit more.
Say, what if her boobies pop out of her shirt? And when you say Italian accent, you meant Father Guido Sarducci, right?
or Super Mario. It's really up to you.
Okay, cool. I got this. Nailed it.
So Francesco follows her out, finding himself surrounded by the blue flames, which lead him to her at her husband's grave.
And this is some 90s ass special effects right here. They look like burning blue marshmallows.
Yeah, it's like they wadded up that stuff from the poo-poo platter and just put it on a little wire.
And that is essentially what they did.
Yeah. Igneous fatuus, which is called fool's fire, is known in America as swamp gas, the famous Air Force explanation for UFO sightings in the 1950s. Mm-hmm. Yep. They have sex on the grave of her husband. Her husband's picture on the grave looks horrified, and I can't remember if that was always the picture on it.
It is. He said they used it specifically because they thought it looked a little bit like Silvio Berlusconi, who was one of the financiers of the film.
Really?
Yeah.
That was awesome. Financed by a cartoonishly corrupt politician.
He does say in that interview, he's like, he wasn't the same person that he is today.
Nagi busily eats a pile of spaghetti, and under the earth, her husband's...
It is so fucking gross.
Every time he eats, I have never seen Italian food look this disgusting, and I love Italian food.
Well, you should put make some spaghetti and put some bananas on it. Manja.
Yep. Under the earth, her husband's corpse suddenly stirs. She announces...
She says something. She's just like, What's better than watching two lovers make love? And it reminded me of that SNL skit, just two lovers. Just two lovers.
As she announces at the height of ecstasy that no one will ever make them part, but then she leans forward, revealing a zombie of her husband behind her. He attacks, taking a couple of big Italian zombie bites out of her, while Francesco looks for something to hit him with. And then he settles on a big wooden cross, smashing it through his skull and mouth.
And it's pretty cool.
It's a badass kill. And then Nagi shows up too late with the gun. So
It's a bit of it's like a Laurel and Hardy thing they kind of have going on.
Yeah. The girl dies in Dellamorte's arms. The next day, a detective shows up looking for details on what happened. The doctor's report says that she died of fear while having sex, and it's here that we learn that Francesco is supposedly impotent, so he couldn't have been the killer.
The cop is one of those weird guys who I think he's American. He started out in like the U.S. film industry, and then like kind of went to Italy and then just stayed there.
Huh.
Like he was in a bunch of detective shit in the 50s and the early 60s, and then he goes to Italy and keeps working there until he dies.
All right.
He's in Squadra Antimafia.
Oh, no shit. Awesome. Yeah. Also, another one of my favorite characters. Like, he is very funny.
I think he's underutilized, and they don't quite emphasize how goofy he is until the very end. Like, he's inconsistently goofy. He's always a little dumb.
Yeah.
But like at the end, he's really dumb.
So that's by design. So this is something that I kind of mentioned very briefly when I was talking about Dylan Dog is Tiziano Sclavi, his parents were communists, and he grew up in this very left-wing house, and it's, as Americans, it's really, really hard for us to sort of to really understand that, because the word communist gets thrown around here a lot, but really it's by Republicans who just mean Democrats. It's completely fucking meaningless. There, that word has real weight to it. It means something, and so you see this a lot in particularly French and Italian movies whenever the cops are involved. And usually when the police are in a movie and they're completely fucking idiot, like any Giallo where the cops are just never in control of the investigation whatsoever.
Oh, there's like a whole subgenre of like not quite the police movies, but they're like crime films that the cops are like bumbling idiots.
Yeah, so Umberto Lenzi is really sort of notorious about this, where because he was a lifelong anarchist, his portrayal of police in his movies are always fucking morons, or they're horribly corrupt, or they're hamstrung by bureaucracy.
I mean, that's why they always taking crime into their own hands. Like, what did I just watch? The Tough Ones.
The Tough Ones.
Same
is
thing.
A
where
very
it's just
good
like,
example of
he's
that.
He's like, I'm just, the police doing it by the book isn't working. I'm going to go out and take care of this myself. And it's like, whoa, man, calm down.
And what happens is that guy just makes everything fucking worse throughout the entire movie. So it's like this is very much in that vein where Sclavi himself was a left-wing Italian, and so his portrayal of police, particularly in this case, is they're completely ineffective, they're morons, they're corrupt, they're stupid.
Well, they also had to be very careful about how they leveled these criticisms because, I think for most of their lives, you couldn't make these statements or criticisms outright because they would show up at your fucking door and drag you out in certain cases. So they find other ways to level criticisms at people in positions of power. And I think a lot of times, just like it happens here from time to time, you'll see it come out in artistic ways.
Yeah. Yep.
I find the impotence thing again that also feels very juvenile to me. Like that feels, and the Soavi says in the interview I watched, he was like, that is a very Italian. He was like, I know Americans didn't really get that part of the story. He's like, sex jokes are just very Italian. But I think that was the one that I keyed in on. I'm like, this feels extremely juvenile. Like this feels like a fear that the writer has.
Because they say impotent, but what they really mean is he literally has no penis.
Yes.
That's what is meant by this.
Yep.
So Francesco agonizes over her dead body in the ossuary when she suddenly starts to rise like the other corpses.
A tasteful boob shot.
Yep. The veil drifts off her body, covering Francesco, who reluctantly pulls the trigger, splitting her head open with the bullet. Then he has Nagi bury her. So in town, he goes back to the city office while the asshole motorcycle guys harass him about being impotent. Francesco tells Nagi that he made that whole thing up and spread the rumor himself. I don't think it's ever really explained why. It just
Which is weird because we're sort of left to believe at the end that this is some part of this story is about his quest for love and his failure to find love. And it's like, well, maybe you shouldn't have started out telling everybody you don't have a penis.
Right.
That's certainly going to hamper your quest.
That's his whole thing is like, he cannot find love because it's always tragic. It always ends in death, which is the Dylan Dog thing.
So this part, when he goes out again, this is when they go to meet the mayor.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is the part that he really gets into explaining he refers to it as he sees that the world outside of the cemetery is really the dangerous place. And he said because he sees it that way, he wanted to shoot it the way he refers to it as graceless. And I thought, okay, I think I see that. I like it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I like the way he phrases it. I don't think he's successful for the reasons we just said, but I like what he's trying to do.
Right, because everybody outside is self-centered,
yeah,
moronic.
They're slobby, boorish, messy people who are really kind of in it for themselves. Everybody.
Yeah.
And this scene really goes a long way to showing you that.
Yeah. It kind of goes overboard. He meets the mayor over lunch. Nagi, upon seeing the mayor's daughter Valentina, becomes love-struck, drooling intensely.
It is so fucking gross.
It is unbelievably gross. See, she wants her father to buy Nagi.
Yeah, I didn't like that stuff either.
Yeah. Nagi, terribly distressed by how much he loves her, suddenly vomits on her.
It is so fucking disgusting because his face is getting like progressively purpler.
Yeah.
And he's drooling in this really thick, disgusting drool. Like, he's really going for it and he's delivering. It is just super gross.
Yeah.
It's like the lard ass scene from Stand By Me. It's very much like, oh no.
Yeah. Thankfully, the leader of the asshole biker kids, Claudio, is there to scoop her up and take her away.
And she says, "He threw up on me, Claudio."
I love the way all the women in this movie say Claudio.
Yeah. Because the other one's great.
So Nagi, upset, runs all the way home. Francesco tries to comfort him through the floorboards of his shack.
And he says something. This is another part where I was like, oh, the 90s. He says something like, you'll find someone who's, I don't know, like just as wrong as you or whatever.
Something like that, yeah. The bikers then ride like crazy through the Italian countryside and ride straight into a tour bus.
German rock video is what we're getting right here. I actually have a note that says this bus crash just saved an increasingly boring movie.
Right, because like blood is splashing on everything. Valentina's head gets torn over. Somebody gets
fantastic.
Somebody gets fully run over, like close up on their head getting run over by the bus.
Yeah,
it's super graphic. It's very Italian. I love this scene.
I don't know if it's with like my mood lately or what, but like I've just been in the mood for really gory movies lately.
Oh my God, me too.
And this really kind of delivered.
Really
for me.
hit the spot, yeah. So yeah, everybody gets run over in graphic detail, and then the bus goes over a cliff, killing everybody on board.
Killing all of the Boy Scouts on board.
Yep. So
it's great.
A massive funeral is held for everybody all at once. Valentina is buried in an ornate glass casket. Claudio is buried with his motorcycle.
It is ridiculous. This is the kind of stuff where that's funny. Like that shit is objectively humorous, and I think it translates well regardless of culture. It's like the dumb sex jokes that I'm like, this is.
It is maximalist and it is very fucking funny.
It's like wildly irreverent in a way that I think speaks to a 90s, maybe particularly Gen X, sense of humor.
Yeah. A grief-stricken girl from the town throws herself on Claudio's casket, sobbing and carrying on.
It is like, no, Claudio, no,
Take me with you, Claudio.
Oh, it's so good.
Yep. Nagi, knowing that she'll be back, is dressed for the occasion, excited to see Valentina again.
He is. My note says, oh no, he's going to have sex with that dead lady.
Not just the lady, just her head.
No.
Francesco knows that they're going to be super busy in the nights to come. So, the girl from the funeral suddenly accosts Francesco, demanding to know if it's true that the dead return there. And Nagi busily eats dinner while watches Gulf War footage.
He is. He's watching whatever he's watching. It's called War Blob.
That's right. So Francesco takes a shower, but the power suddenly goes out. Not gonna lie, that seems like a bad place to put an electrical box.
It does. I will
literally
say,
in the shower.
I will say, I appreciate that this movie is, while not quite equal opportunity when it comes to nudism, we do see a lot of Rupert Everett nude.
Yeah.
Not as much as like we do see women, but in a genre that is known for exploiting women's bodies, it's nice to see a little bit of equity.
That's right. Because he is like carved from
Oh
marble.
yeah. He is at his most beautiful in this film.
Yeah. But yeah, the shock. It reminds me of. Did you ever watch Park and Rec? Mm-hmm. Shockwire from the Halloween party. They have an exposed. Wire,
yes.
exposed wire in the shower.
Yeah.
And if you touch it, you die. So Francesco then takes a shower. Power goes out. Someone is in his shack wandering around. When he throws the curtain aside, he finds the zombie of one of the Boy Scouts waiting for him. So they struggle. Now we find out that there's more Boy Scout zombies in his place. Francesco manages to get the gun and blast their head to pieces.
Why is one of them laying in his bed under the covers?
Because it's a good scare. That's why.
I guess.
Yeah. Down in Nagi's room, a couple more zombies enter, but he has headphones on and doesn't react. Francesco runs in time, but he loses the gun, resorting to smashing their heads in with a heavy object instead.
Well, it's the nun that he does that to.
Oh, right.
Which feels particularly pointed. Also, the nun is very obviously played by a man.
Right, yeah.
I wonder if it's like, if in the original script they were like, and then there's a nun, and they were like, whoa. You can have a man playing a nun, but you can't have a woman playing a nun. Everyone's going to think she's an actual nun.
Oh, right. When they go out to the cemetery to rebury the dead, they find the sobbing girl from before, just sobbing on Claudio's grave. Suddenly, Claudio's zombie bursts out of the ground on his motorcycle.
It is so fucking cool. So apparently the way that they did this, because it looks like he's coming up out of the ground on a motorcycle, and it looks that way because he is.
That's awesome.
So there's like a tunnel underneath the ground that he had to get, to get like a running start essentially. And he rides up and tries to come out, but it took them 3 nights to shoot this because the motorcycle was too heavy each time. He couldn't get it up. He couldn't get enough speed up to get the whole thing up and out. So they just had to keep getting lighter and lighter ones until they finally got one that he could get himself and the motorcycle through the dirt.
Damn.
And it looks great. Yeah. And Claudio's makeup is fucking awesome. It's like,
right.
Real
He's got that one collapsed eye where there's like a flashing light inside.
Yep. And he's got like some big coil it's sticking out of his head. It's like, it's spoopy, but in a way that I'm like, that is fucking awesome. Like that is, if I saw someone doing that kind of cosplay, I'd be like, look, I think cosplay is dumb as shit, but you just won the whole game. Like it is.
Again, it's
fun.
this movie's production design is so fucking good.
And that's partially why I think I got frustrated, because I'm just like, there's so many things about this that I really love and that's really fun and that they really deliver on. But like someone needed to take a fucking knife to this script and just cut some of this shit
that is
out.
the thing is that's probably where my frustration with this movie stems from is it looks so good, but unfortunately you can't get by purely on production design. Like eventually I start to like I said, like my mind starts wandering. I start like looking at my phone and shit. So a little story would have gone a long way.
Yeah. And I think that's like, Soavi seems like he was paid so much attention to the design of everything. Like Dellamorte's gun. He was like, we are very specific about that. It
feels like a really deliberate move.
It's a 1908 something. He was like, it's a very specific gun, and there's a reaon. I can't remember why he wanted it, but like they don't make the bullets for it anymore. So he was like, the arms master had to like rechamber the whole thing and like make so they could get 38 bullets into it. So he's like, he had to create a new thing. And then he was like, and I wanted that little ring on the bottom, which I don't know what that's for.
That's that's a really Italian touch.
Yeah. So he was like, he had to like go back. So they had to basically chrome plate this gun because it's not made out of chrome. It's made out of steel. And so the guy had to chrome plate it because he's like, we're shooting at night and it's going to look a lot cooler if it's chrome plated. And the guy was like, okay, fine. And so he goes back and he keeps having to like go back because the guy's like, he wants this specific gun that is no longer manufactured. And then when he finally gets that gun, he has to like basically retcon the gun to like, work in a new way. And then he has to chrome plate the gun. And then he's like, I want that little ring on the end. And the guy's like, God damn it. So he has to like go and install that on there. It's like you're paying attention to all these little details, and your story is sluggish and stupid.
I know.
Convoluted and just it goes nowhere.
Shallow and pedantic.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is a sort of tradition of gunsmithing in Italy where a tremendous amount of like emphasis is placed on the design of Italian weapons.
Oh yeah, and they're really proud of it. Like I watched that documentary on the Bronx Warriors, that collection, that 3-movie collection, where he does this like big interview with the guy who does all the weapons. I mean, he did the weapons for fucking every movie. Especially at that time. And because they're trying to make all of those, like, they're all like apocalyptic movies or post-apocalyptic movies. He like had to come up with new weapons, and he was so proud of like, here's my flamethrower from Endgame or whatever. And it's like, it's all really cool, but like, come on, man.
Yeah.
You're making some dumb shit.
Yeah. Don't skip on the guns, man.
I guess not.
So anyways, they chase Claudio around through the cemetery until he stops. And then the girl climbs on and off they ride. Mm-hmm. So Francesco and Nagi search the cemetery for them, eventually finding them in the nook where zombie Claudio eats the girl's arm. And she protests Francesco's obvious task of shooting him dead by announcing, I shall be eaten by whomever I please.
Mind your business. I can be eaten by whoever I please.
So he shoots zombie Claudio, but the bullet also passes through him and kills the girl as well by accident.
And he seems a little bit like, whatever.
Right.
It was going to happen one way or another.
So they bury the two of them together, so they'll be together forever.
I do like that he like chucks her in there, and Nagi kind of gives him this like quizzical look, and he's like, they'll be together forever.
Yeah. So by day, Nagi plays a DIY violin by the grave of Valentina before he digs her up and chops off her head.
I find this scene very upsetting because it's a glass coffin and he just has that like really sharp spade.
It's one that they've been sharpening. So it's like a weird, like triangle spike thing.
Yeah. And then he just like breaks through the glass, and I think he accidentally cuts her head off.
No. He cuts her on purpose.
Okay.
Because also her head got ripped off when it was hit by the bus.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. He sets it on the ground, and then she comes to life and talks to him. Then he kisses her and plays the violin for her while her severed head follows him through the cemetery somehow back to his room. It's very clearly like a little dog in like a headpiece.
And I want to say, how is her head traveling? But I feel like the answer is it doesn't matter.
Yeah, don't worry about it, because it's also going to fly a little later on.
Yes.
So Francesco.
This is when he makes the pasta with bananas.
Yes. Francesco patrols the cemetery while Nagi easily pieces together a skull puzzle that we've been seeing Francesco struggle to assemble throughout the movie. As Francesco comes back, Nagi suddenly takes it apart and pretends to have difficulty putting it together. and I don't understand this, but that's fine.
I think it's just to emphasize that Francesco is kind of like a little bit of an arrogant asshole.
Yeah.
He assumes that Nagi is
A dummy.
when it's like he just can't talk.
Yeah. So Nagi brings 2 plates of food down to his room, which makes Francesco suspicious. It's the spaghetti with bananas, as mentioned before.
But then it also has like lettuce on it too.
And like a big piece of bread and some sausage. I'm not going to try. I'm not going to have banana spaghetti ever.
Manja. That's a nice donut.
It's a nice donut.
That's one.
He tries to see what he's doing through the floorboards. He hears Valentina laughing, but he can't see. There's also noises out in the cemetery, so he goes out to see what the deal is. After a bit of searching, he suddenly comes face to face with the zombie of the woman he fell in love with. Which I keep saying this, she has no name in this movie.
She's just called She.
She.
Which is probably because she is going to play 8,000 characters in this story.
Right. So they embrace passionately, and she pulls the gun away from him without his knowledge, and it takes a big bite out of him. She's about to bite him again, but Nagi shows up with a shovel and hits her, killing her finally.
Now, look, I just gotta say, the implication of all of this is that when he shot her, she was not a zombie.
Right.
And so,
but the doctor said she was dead.
Also, I gotta say, I think this is on her. If you had just raised up on that table with a little less dramatic flourish.
I know.
Maybe
the slow-mo, the billowing veil, all that stuff. Like we could have avoided this whole mess.
Yeah, a simple, oh my God, don't shoot me, I'm still alive would have been sufficient. So I feel like it's a little bit on her.
Yeah. In the morning, he mournfully burns garbage as Mrs. Kiramundo auditions some gravestone photos for him. He becomes angry when he realizes that Nagi put the old phone book on the fire as he enjoys reading it.
That is a very specific touch that I feel like is maybe funnier in Italian.
A little something lost in translation.
Yeah.
The ashes float upwards, and a nearby statue comes to life as the Grim Reaper, insisting that Francesco stop killing the dead.
It is cool as hell.
Badass. It is a very awesome puppet.
I watched like a kind of a behind the scenes thing. It's not a puppet.
What?
It's a person. It's a very specific person. But they show like a clip of how they're doing it, and they basically have fans blowing, so all that stuff is swirling. Like you see it swirling. The ashes are coming together to form this big Grim Reaper thing. So they're really blowing this stuff around. I mean, then eventually he does sort of pop up in the thing, but like they don't come together to form a person. But they are blowing them around, which is really awesome. It's Derek Jacobi. And Derek Jacobi, I don't know if you know who he is. You'd know him if you saw him. He is a Shakespearean actor. He's in all those Kenneth Branagh movies. He's in Gosford Park. I think he might have been in Game of Thrones. He's like a man of much renown. He's a very, very well-known actor. He plays Death. Oh,
no shit. All right. Well, I mean, it makes sense you'd spot that. You're the classier of the two of us.
It's just such a fucking cool scene to like watch all the ash come together. Like that again, like this is that flourish it's really sophisticated stuff that you then undermine with some gross shit.
Yeah. Yeah. So that night, Franco calls from the town office as the rest of the Boy Scouts climb out of the grave. Francesco casually shoots them from the table and in his room as they line up outside.
This part feels a little weird because they've got, it feels like every night there's like one or maybe two. And like that's the night's work. And then he has to kind of go and rebury him. I get that. And then they show this part. And it's like that scene in Return of the Living Dead where there's like just a horde of zombies coming out of the graves.
Yeah, yeah. Because, it is that sort of like slow pullback with the camera, and all of a sudden there's just a shitload of them there. It feels like it's leading to something.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't.
That's what most of this movie is. It all feels like it's going somewhere and it never gets there.
Yeah.
Because it gets fucking sidetracked a million times.
Yeah. Later that evening, he rides out to the city, this being Francesco, where the bikers hang out.
But before that happens, he's on the phone, because this part confused the shit out of me. So he's on the phone with Franco, and he falls asleep while he's talking to him.
Yeah.
And which I was like, oh, this is kind of cute that they're just like, just two gals up talking to the late at night, and then one of them falls asleep. And then, so we're not supposed to know, is this a dream? But I didn't catch this until the second time. Or so like, or do we think he's in a dream? Or
I think so, because like things get a little confusing.
This is when it gets very confusing. So Soavi says that the way he interpreted this scene is that Francesco is getting confused about like where he is. Like he thinks he's still in the cemetery. He thinks he's still doing his job as he's in this kind of dreamlike state, but they never explain that. And they never give us any visual cues that would lead us to understand that. So what it looks like is that he gets in his car and then just goes out and starts killing people.
Yeah, I think I've thought about this quite a bit. I think what happens is the appearance of the Grim Reaper is supposed to be this sort of like the moment where he kind of loses control over his kind of grip on reality. And so, he becomes like the arch unreliable narrator in this part.
I find this is where the movie really kind of, it really goes off the rails in a way that is harmful to the end result.
Yeah.
Because then he says at the end, so he shoots them all in the square and, kills the gang that made fun of him or whatever. And there's a more internal monologuing, more narration where he says, "It's at times I get ahead of my work." And that line implies that he's done this before.
Yeah.
To say at times means that he's done it before. And so it's like, you just halfway through your movie, your protagonist becomes a serial killer?
I guess.
Because of one thing that the Grim Reaper told him?
Yep.
Like, that shit's just lame.
I guess, yeah. Because, I mean, really, I don't... You sound like it makes you mad.
Well, because it just
kind
like
of
they
accept it.
It gets to a point, they're like, how do we get him there? How do we get him there? I don't know. He's a killer now. There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
It's lazy writing.
Or you know what it is it feels like... there are times in this movie when the process of editing almost feels like it was very destructive.
Yes.
In that they leave very important parts of the story out.
But then there's other parts, like the engineer thing, where it's like, this feels like a continuity thing. Like maybe there was another part in this movie where they did explain why they call him the engineer.
Yeah.
And then they just cut that out, but never bothered to cut out the other stuff. And it's just like, it did make me angry because I'm like, wait a minute, what? This is where it takes that turn. And I'm like, this feels like a different movie.
Right. Yeah, because sometimes later he's back in his room where he's awoken by knocking at the door, thinking that it's a zombie. He jumps up, but it turns out that it's just that detective again. He's there to ask Francesco about it, as his car was seen near the scene of the crime. He doesn't suspect Francesco. However, he thinks it was Nagi for some reason. So,
which is another thing, because he's like, if you can't give me an alibi, you're going to go to jail. And he's like, but also I think it's your friend. It's like,
right.
Well, then why are you going to put him in jail?
I know. So Francesco goes in to talk to Nagi, finding him there entertaining Valentina's severed head as she sings the melody that we've been hearing throughout the movie.
And it is fucking disgusting.
Right, because she's like starting to drool. And,
but it's
really
like yellowish, thick yellowish drool.
Yep. It's not clear why the detective doesn't go in to talk to him, but they instead move on to Valentina's grave with her father, the mayor, who intends to take some pictures with her body in order to gain sympathy from voters who are upset about the unsolved mystery of the bikers.
See, there you go. Great humor. Love it. I think, you know what it is? I think that what bothers me is that the second half of this movie feels considerably more sloppy than the first part. The first half is pretty tight. It's got some holes, but like for the most part, it's a pretty entertaining movie.
Yes,
and they were like, let's just finish this shit up.
It just feels loose and like they're trying to race toward the conclusion.
Yeah.
But there's still like 45 minutes left of the movie.
Around this part, I clicked to see how much was left. It's like a fucking hour left of the movie. Yeah. And I think it says quite a lot that of my notes, there are 2 more pages left. And there's more than an hour of the movie left.
Same. Yeah.
So I had 8 pages of notes, and 6 of them we've already talked about in the first 45 minutes.
Yeah. When they dig her up, they find the body without the head, but her voice calls to her father off in the distance. It brings him back to Nagi's place, where her head calls to him from the inside of the broken television.
I do like when they open the thing and he's like, "Where's her head?" And
He goes,
Rupert Everett's just like, "Oh."
Yeah. The mayor doesn't understand what he's seeing, but it doesn't matter because it only gets weirder. She wants to marry Nagi, but he refuses over his dead body, so her head suddenly flies out of the TV, taking a big old bite out of his neck.
Yeah.
Francesco shows up to shoot the flying head while it bites the mayor, killing her, and then the mayor succumbs to his wounds. There is an awesome shot here of her head flying across the room from the inside of her mouth.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
It feels a little Japanese to me. But it also feels very like 80s in a kind of like The Gate kind of way.
Oh, okay, yeah. What actually, it's completely random. What I am reminded of is, have you ever seen La Femme Nikita?
Yes, I was thinking about it this afternoon, actually.
Wild. Do you remember? Okay, so the very first like big action set piece in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. During that, there is a scene where she's trying to get away, and she's about to jump into like the garbage chute, and one of the thugs like points the gun at her and shoots her, and what you see is your POV is riding with the bullet. It is fucking awesome. It reminds me of this scene like a lot.
It's interesting that you say that because that was what he had wanted to do. He
said
he wanted
I'm a
to
fucking
do,
genius.
Not specifically with this scene, he just with the bullets in general. He said that because that's why he's carving crosses into them because he's essentially making like explosive bullets.
Right. So yeah, when they impact inside of a person,
what he had wanted to do was to have like kind of like a bullet time sort of thing, where as it flies, you travel with it and you watch it spread into what is essentially a cross as it goes into them. And he was like, but we didn't have the technology and there was absolutely no way to do it. But that's what he had wanted to do.
That's awesome.
What was the name of the La Femme Nikita American? Was that Point of No Return?
Point of No Return, yeah.
That was what I was
dog shit movie.
It's terrible.
The Hong Kong version, Black Cat, is pretty good though.
I almost bought that the other day.
Yeah. So a week later, Francesco comforts Nagi over his loss and then has to deal with the zombie mayor who climbs onto a nearby crypt and refuses to come down. So he shoots him. Later, the new mayor comes by the cemetery as Francesco and Nagi put up barbed wire along the top of the cemetery walls. He's seeking an official denial of the report that Franco filed alleging that the dead come to life there after a week and walk around biting the living.
Which I think, that's nice of Franco. He's just trying to get him some help.
Just trying to help him out. As they're leaving, the new mayor introduces his assistant, a woman identical to the woman that Francesco loved and accidentally killed.
Now, I imagine there is an explanation for why he keeps seeing this woman and why she is played by the same person. They don't really tell us, though.
No. Again, I think it's supposed to be this sort of like implied collapse of his mental state is he sees her everywhere now.
I guess.
But the thing is his interactions with them, they may as well be her because every time he sees them, they're like, right. Oh, I love you. Never will we part.
And she's not a good enough actress to make us believe that it's different people.
Yeah.
It just looks like the woman he's killed 900 times keeps showing up, and then they don't really tell you why that is.
Yeah, right. She returns that night, passes out when Francesco suddenly throws open the door to his shack and thrusts the gun in her face, thinking that she's a zombie. Then she comes to and immediately falls in love with him like the last time, explaining that she can only love an impotent man because apparently erections frighten her.
And look, if this movie didn't already go off the rails, it's about to go even off the rails here.
Oh, good God, yeah. So in the day, Francesco goes to the doctor to see if he'll castrate him so he can fully love this woman. Unable to bring himself to cut off Francesco's penis, the doctor opts instead for a massive syringe full of some liquid that he insists will make it like he never had a penis and that'll last a month. So he injects it directly into Francesco's dong.
In what is the most juvenile scene in the movie?
Yep. While recovering, Nagi sends the mysterious woman away, and sometimes later, Mrs. Chiaramondo dies.
I didn't like that.
Nah. The woman returns, and then they kiss passionately, but she has to tell him something fucking horrible.
Hey, I didn't like when the old lady died. You know what I liked even less?
When she tells her...
The next 10 minutes of this fucking movie.
The mayor raped her, but she liked it.
Well, no. She liked it the second time. When she let him do it again to show her that... to show him that she wasn't angry with him. This is so fucking gross.
This is unbelievably terrible. I cannot get past this.
When they got to this part, I was like, oh, come on, man.
What are you
even for
doing?
an Italian, this is not okay. And in 1994.
So yeah, she's no longer afraid of
so much she's gonna marry him.
Yep, she's no longer afraid of penises, so she's gonna marry him. But hey, it's all cool. She can still see Francesco. The mayor's cool with that.
When his dick smallening drug wears off in a month or whatever, that solves the problem, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you didn't need this whole disgusting "he raped me and I liked it" part, because that is clearly being played for laughs.
Yeah, it's meant to be funny. Guess what?
It's not. It's really not. It is super disgusting.
Yeah. So by night, Francesco looks to pick up some sex workers, but he drives off.
Do you know what he's got? What is he sitting at the table in the bar? Did you see what's behind him?
A Super Mario Brothers?
It's a Super Mario Brothers.
That's right.
That classic Italian game.
Yep. At this bar, he meets two students, one of whom looks just like the girl he's in love with. So he goes back to their place with them, and he has sex with the woman who tells him that she loves him.
And look, I think it is fair to say everybody knows what's happening in this situation. And even him. He knows what's happening here.
Yeah, it's like he's never heard of the girlfriend experience.
Yeah. Also, someone who is involved in the shooting of this film, I think, has a foot fetish, because there are several scenes where it's just like a woman taking off her shoe in a sexy manner, which I don't even know what that would look like. Probably because I don't have a foot fetish. But... yeah, it happens a couple times.
Yeah. When he goes to get some wine, her roommate explains that Francesco can pay her for the services rendered, and his attitude changes.
My note says, when he goes out to get some wine, my note says, Italians, am I right? I'm just making myself laugh at this point.
It'll cost extra for telling him that she loves him. So he goes back to her room, places a space heater in her bed as she sleeps, setting the place on fire, killing all of the women inside, announcing that he's done with love.
And this is exactly why I'm terrified of space heaters.
Don't put those things up.
I know that they don't make them that way anymore, and that it is very unlikely that they will burst into flames, but I still can't do it.
Nope.
I can't do it. Also, this is a really fucking dark scene.
Yeah. Now the detective comes calling again. Francesco thinks he's there to arrest him, but he's only there to tell him that he found the charred remains of the check that he wrote the girls, and that the killer is in a psychiatric hospital having confessed to the murders and the murder of his wife and child.
Which, again, makes no fucking sense.
Nope. I don't fucking get it. Well, it's like, I don't know. It's kind of like, I suppose
they're racing to the conclusion again.
Either that or, this is like the end of American Psycho, where it's like, okay, wait, is
but
any
the end
of this
of American
actually
Psycho,
happening?
But the end of American Psycho, it's very, I've never seen the movie. I did read the book and I hated it, but it's made very explicit. Like, he is completely come undone by the end of that movie, and you don't know what's real and what's not. At the end of this, we are still assuming that he's just existing in the real world, and all of a sudden he's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And so that's what I don't like. Is like there's so many, I don't know if maybe they tried to weave in too many plot threads from the source material or what, but there's so much going on that I think they kind of got to the end and were like, oh shit, we got to wrap all this stuff up. How do we do it? I don't know. How about this? And it's just so fucking sloppy and lazy for a movie that is at times very clever.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just disappointing to watch someone be like, I don't know, let's just fucking get it done somehow.
Right. Francesco goes to see the man in the hospital, and it turns out that the guy who took credit for the murders of the women is Franco, his friend from the city office, and he's in a coma now, or is he?
No, he's not. He's not.
Francesco, angry about it, questions him, and then a nun angrily challenges him about his lit cigarette in the hospital room, so he shoots her dead where she stands.
Shoots her straight through the eye. This one is a woman.
Yeah, Franco isn't in the coma that everybody thinks he is, though. Also, a doctor comes along wondering what the nun is doing on the floor, and Francesco shoots him too. Francesco then demands an answer from Franco about the murder, and when another nurse comes along, Francesco shoots her too.
He says something like, she's like, what happened here? And he's like, they got into a fight and killed each other.
Right. A settling of scores.
Yeah.
Franco, in a stupor, insists that he doesn't know who Francesco is and tells him to go away, which he does.
And I also found this part really kind of gross and unsettling because they make a lot of use of drool in this movie.
This is a very drooly movie.
He is drooling very heavily. And it bothers me that he has just like a tube that's just sitting in his mouth for some reason. It's like,
right.
That goes down the throat, right? It's not just like resting on your lips. But he has drool, but then there's like blood in the drool. It's
a little bloody.
And it looks very real in a way that I do not care for.
No.
And then it's like a crane shot up, and he's just in this it looks like a soap opera set.
Yeah. Again, it's the is this real thing.
And it would work a lot better if we actually knew one way or another. Like it's so ambiguous as to be meaningless.
Right. So yeah, Francesco runs into he leaves. He runs into the stupid detective again, who doesn't for a second suspect that it's Francesco who shot those people in the.
He says, "Oh, good, you've got a gun. You can protect yourself."
I do love that.
Yeah.
So he shouts out that he's the killer and then leaves. By night in the rain, Francesco tells the Grim Reaper statue that he's done killing and he's leaving. The statue admonishes him, telling that there's nowhere to go.
This part, I think, is decidedly less cool than the first reveal, because he just sort of looks up and has a skull.
Yeah. Undeterred, he fixes his car in the morning and hits the road with Nagi, looking forward to a future anywhere that isn't the cemetery. Mm-hmm. On the way, he hits a bike rider. Together, they leave Buffalore, entering one of those crazy alpine tunnels, unaware of what the other side will look like. Nagi falls asleep. On the other side of the tunnel, Francesco becomes panicked and slams on the brakes suddenly. It causes Nagi to hit his head on the dashboard. Then Francesco gets out and walks up to the edge of a cliff face. The road simply ends there.
What?
Looking out, yeah, I know. Looking out over a river and the forest below, there's nothing there. The rest of the world doesn't exist. Okay. So Nagi stumbles out of the car and up to the edge, his face bleeding from the impact. He falls over and appears to die on the road.
And it's a really sad moment.
Right, because you like Nagi a lot.
But they don't take advantage of that moment. They just sort of keep going.
Yeah. Francesco grabs his gun, getting ready to shoot Nagi where he lays as it begins to snow.
I think he's going to shoot both. He's going to shoot himself.
Right, because he puts 2 bullets in it. But he can't bring himself to do it. He sits down on the edge of the world, tossing the gun away, telling Nagi that he was his best friend. But then Nagi wakes up and sits, speaking for the first time, asking to be taken home, to which Francesco casually replies, "Nya."
And you think, this is where the movie should end. And that's right. That's where the movie should end.
But then we fade out on a snow globe of Francesco and Nagi from the opening credits.
Because why not?
I guess. Does this world exist entirely inside of a snow globe? Is that what's happening here?
So I think you're right. I think that we are to believe that he is coming undone through the second half of the movie. But
it's just not articulated in a way. Like you can be very subtle about that. There are definitely movies that do this.
It's just bad writing.
It's bad, sloppy writing. It does not come across well. For whatever reason.
So I know there was a lot of studio interference in the script because they had wanted the movie to have as wide appeal as they could. So they were probably thinking for English-speaking markets, we
right,
need to
because
be
this
a
is
little
very
more,
much an Italian production,
Yep.
but they go out of their way to have it in English.
Yes. And so that could be one of the reasons why, because I think Rupert Everett was also really upset with the script and he protested a lot of stuff, and they ended up getting some of the stuff put back in. But so it could be that this whole like difference between life and me, death thing, that would work if we saw Francesco as always ambivalent, like from the beginning, about like whether or not he wants to join the world or stay in the cemetery and be a fucking recluse or whatever. But that's never really the case. We don't get any insight into his life. He has no interiority other than he's obsessed with this one woman or 9 women. I don't know which.
Yeah. That's the thing is, like, he comes off kind of like it's like a character from like a fucking Godard movie or something like that. He's obsessed not really with this woman. He's obsessed with like love as an abstract, and he never gets it, and it makes him really kind of morose and somber. But like that's not where the story goes.
No. And we never spend enough time with him that we like him or don't like him. So like when he takes these big sharp turns,
I actually find his character a little insufferable.
Yeah, he's kind of whiny. He's not he's charming in as much as Rupert Everett is charming.
Yeah. He's like really kind of like a teenager's sort of ideal of love.
That's exactly what Rupert Everett said. It's like he said, when I read the script, the way I saw him was that he's like a teenager. He's very kind of petulant, and he doesn't really have a lot of insight into anything. He's very self-absorbed. And it's like, okay, I get that, but like in order to have this epiphany at the end, he has to have a narrative arc. He has to, there has to be some sort of overcome challenge or whatever, instead of just kind of devolving into becoming a murderer.
Yeah.
And then being like, well, I wasted my life. Like, what?
Right. And this is, oh, by the way, roll credits. But this is what's really kind of at the heart
Thank God.
I know. This is what's at the heart of my conflict, of my frustration with this movie is it is fucking beautiful. It has an unbelievable look to it. It looks unlike anything that has ever come out of it. Well, not anything, but this is not the sort of movie you expect from Italian exploitation. This really, I've mentioned the name before, this really does remind me of Jean-Pierre Geunet's movies, which are fucking beautiful and surreal and very strange. But this just doesn't have this sort of wit and whimsy of those movies,
Geunet's movies have like a kind of gravitas.
Yeah, this is very much rooted in the sort of Italian exploitation tradition. It's just the way that it looks, the way that every single shot is composed. All of the details that we've pointed out are very particular. There's a mastery about them, but the story is frustrating as hell because it just it goes in one direction and you follow it, and then all of a sudden at the midpoint it just takes a left, and all of a sudden I'm lost.
It feels like it had 10 or 12 writers. And each person just kept revising and revising until like nothing makes sense anymore. And you can feel it. Like you could feel as though this almost feels like it was shot sequentially, because you get to a certain point in the movie, about 46 minutes into it, when all of a sudden it becomes another movie. And you're like, wait, what? I don't like any of this anymore.
Yeah.
And I think, you're right. That is what's frustrating about it. Is because like, I enjoyed this conversation a lot more than I enjoyed the movie. Like I liked talking about this movie more than I liked watching it. And that sucks. Because it's like there is stuff in here there's a lot to really like, but you got to sit through a lot of fucking schlock to get there, and it's just, I don't know that it's really worth it.
Right. If you've not seen this movie, listener, it's worthy. It's worth your attention. It's worth seeing because it's beautiful. It has an amazing look.
It's also kind of a capstone in in Italian horror. It ended an era.
What? Absolutely. This is definitely the movie for that kind of whole thing to go out on. Because like after this, we start to. It's not the end. You know, Argento's still got some titles in him, but like it's not his best stuff. Like the rest of the decade is pretty fucking bleak. Yep. It's a hell of a title to go out on. It's just unfortunately, it's just very frustrating because you can. There's a movie here that could have been really fucking good.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also some of the, you know, like the rape stuff and the.
Oh God, yeah.
Some of the gratuitous.
I pushed that out of my mind because when that happened, I was like, oh God, that's right. I forgot about this.
Yeah, and that's just, I think that's part of like a remnant of the 90s that we would all just like to pretend didn't happen. Like, you know, one of the things we talk a lot about is like how this shit ages, and you know, some of the 80s stuff you're like, all right, it was just sort of the way that movies were made, and yeah, they were exploitation and whatever, but like that's a very intentional choice. They knew what they were doing, and it's disgusting.
Yeah. It kind of gives me hope. Like I really, really hope. I'm surprised that nobody's done it since then, but I really wish that somebody would come back around and either do another Dellamorte Dellamore movie or do Dylan Dog proper. I'm really not sure.
They wanted to do it. So Soavi was planning to do a sequel in like 2012-ish. It sounds like it just never got off the ground. Right. One way or another. And then Rupert Everett wanted to do an American remake, but like basically with Soavi, he just wanted to take the whole thing and just do an American version of it, which like, why? This basically is that.
Right. Because in Italy, like they have gone back to these comics and these fumetti, and they've done it. Like there have been a couple of Diabolique movies in the last like 10 years that are really good.
Are they better than the first one? Because the first one's not good.
They're not like groovy and bava like that, but they're extremely stylish, and they feel like the original comics. So like somebody out there in Italy has definitely got the skill. And there is a market for it because, like, I don't, you know, Sclavi doesn't produce these comics anymore, but they're still heavily in circulation. So, I don't know.
Oh,
bring it back. Somebody do it.
Someone has to watch the cats and make sure they don't get off the carpet.
Somebody do it right. Somebody who's not James Wan.
No.
Yeah. So, I guess, that's Dellamorte Dellamore, a.k.a. Cemetery Man. Yeah. What's next?
Well, as you said, up top, we are heading into October, and that is a full month of Bring Me the Axe. And we're starting with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a movie that I very, very often have said I do not like, and yet every single time I watch it, I think to myself, holy shit, that's a good movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I cannot wait to talk about it because I want to take that conversation in a very particular direction. Like, we're going to give it the usual, you know, analytical eye that we give it, but honestly, there's not much left to say about Texas Chainsaw Massacre that hasn't been said. But I have a very strange perspective on the movie that I hope to explore on that one.
All right, I'm in.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, you don't want to give them the next the 1 in 2 weeks? We're just going to give them Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
We're just doing Texas.
All right, we're going to be mysterious. All right, so be back here next week for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's going to be fun.
Ew.